Cool, so I'll pass over to Rebecca Lyons again for learning about bots. Thanks, everyone.
For those of you who didn't see my session 2 user groups ago, my name is Rebecca Lyons and I'm an Azure Application Development Technology Solutions Professional. I work in parts of to do with application development, and bots is something that I'm seeing a lot of with my customers around Australia. Basically, bots are anything an application can do, whether it be mobile or web, it just has a conversational interface. And so today I'm going to be going through a Bot 101, running through what are the types of bots, how to build bots, and then an example solution of covering all the different parts of what a bot can do. So a brief introduction about myself. I'm a gamer at heart. I've got a passion for the gaming industry, and I love the idea that people can put their games on the Azure platform and on the cloud. I love going out and adventuring, so hiking, and I've got a background in Android application development, so I love coding things together. I'm not an exceptional software engineer, but I love to hack things together, and bots is my latest and greatest passion project. So what I'll be covering today, an overview of what bots are. So I'll start with pretty much what they aren't, so debunking some of the myths that a lot of people have around bots. Just a quick show of hands, who here has interacted with a chatbot before online? Cool. Has anyone built a bot before?
We are doing it as we speak.
Oh, awesome. Using the bot.
Sure.
Oh, great. Excellent. I'll have to see what you're doing after. So I'll give an overview of what they aren't, what they are, how they work in between. I'll talk briefly about the types of bots, and I just want to preface this with saying these aren't the only types of bots out there, but what the bot service on Azure provides you is quick start templates, so you can accelerate your bot development. And these quick start templates are around these main types of interactions. Then I'll go on to how to actually build a bot, and I'll be covering off an example bot that's available for you to browse through and see the code online on GitHub, covering all the different parts of what a bot can do, from Q&A to language understanding to actually complex form flows. And then if we have time at the end, I'll talk about how we can extend our bot capabilities with the Azure Serverless platform. Awesome. So with that, I'll kick off and start the first part of the presentation, which is what are bots? So a good place to start is debunk some of the myths that a lot of people have around bots. Bots aren't necessarily, full-fledged artificial intelligence. They're not HAL. Bots are only as smart and as functional as you build them to be. They're like any other mobile or web application that you build. They're not limited to text interfaces only, so you don't have to be, typing everything away to be able to get a bot to do something. You can have buttons, you can have carousels of images and of videos as well. So it's really as open as you want it to be. And the good thing about the bot platform itself is that a lot of the time different channels, such as Facebook or Slack, will take care of rendering that user interface for you, so you don't have to worry about CSS anymore. And they're not particularly language processing only. You can have a bot that responds simply to different commands. It doesn't have to understand what a user is trying to get in natural language. They can just be simple commands to go and do something in the back end. Simply, bots are apps with a new interface. So with that, let's cover what bots are. This is a bit of a behind-the-scenes view of what the bot service is, specifically the Microsoft Bot platform itself. So like any other application or mobile or web-based, you start with your bot code, which you can see on the left-hand side there. What you'll do is call out to the Bot Builder SDK, and this SDK is really great at taking care of all the things that a bot needs to do in order to be a bot. So dialogue management, user state, and also connecting out to the Bot Connector service. The Bot Connector service is what is pretty much the reason that bots are really taking off in the industry right now. Bots aren't anything new, they were available before. What the Bot Connector service does is it connects you to all these different channels to be able to service your bot to. With the Bot Connector service, you simply connect once to the connector, and if Facebook changes their API or Kik decides to change their API, that's all handled for you by the service. So you don't have to actually explicitly define how your bot talks to these different endpoints. It's just available for you. And then when you're ready to publish it, you go to the Azure Bot service on Azure, and you just click one of these to deploy to, and you're good to go. That's getting the user information to and from the channel itself. If you want to inject any intelligence into this, that's when you add in some of the Microsoft Cognitive Services. So if you wanted language understanding, you can use Lewis, you can use speech detection, text-to-speech, speech-to-text, that kind of thing, translation into different languages, and we've got about 25 different other cognitive services that you can use. And if you wanted to make this more applicable into your organization's capabilities, you can talk out to other services or other resources that you have. So they can be other APIs, they can be other data sources, anything that a mobile web could do. So why are we talking about bots? Well, I think one of the main number one reasons is that bots can save you money. Bots are really good at automating tasks that you don't need a human to do. So things like password resets, answering your top frequently asked questions. Put a bot in front of maybe a support center, and you can take away some of the load and demand that your support center would have, so they can spend more time on those different issues that need a bit of human interaction. You can reach users anywhere on any platform or device. It's a new way of developing applications rather than just thinking, okay, this is an Android app, this is an iOS app. Well, this is just a bot, and we can surface that bot on different channels that our users are already engaged in. So we can surface our organization's functionality and business processes on Facebook Messenger. A user already has Messenger downloaded. They don't have to go to an app store. They don't have to go to a website. They're already engaged on that platform. It's just bringing your organization's data and information to them to make it easier for them to interact in a way that's essentially more natural to a human. So what are the types of bots? Well, there are many different types of bots. These are just the types of bots that we have as pre-built templates on the Azure Bot service itself. So you can start very, very basic with just a basic skeleton here. What that will do will just answer to specific queries from the user itself. It's not going to take any natural language into it. It's not going to answer any questions. It's just going to do certain things based on explicit calls. And so what I'm going to do, as I go through this list, I'm going to flick over to some examples of these different types of bots. So for an example of a basic bot, I've got an Azure Bot here. Now, this Azure Bot is pretty simple. As you can see, I'm just asking it to do certain things: start VM, help, hi, yes, one. I'm not asking it to do anything fancy. I'm not saying, hey Bob, can you please start up this virtual machine for me? It's leading me through a conversation. It's leading me through what I can do, and all I'm doing is just executing queries on the end, and it will just give me the results back based on that.
What's wrong with just pressing the button start virtual machine?
Well,
Oh, so when?
so this is an example of being able to just type in things, but I could also have it as an interface with a button, so I could press start VM if I coded it. The next type of bot is question and answer bot. So this is taking a little bit of language understanding to be able to present back to the user some static answers. So this has been used a lot of the time by my different customers as a form of, a welcome bot to a website, or as a bot that they place in front of their call center to answer the user's frequently asked questions. And what this is using is something called Q&A Maker, which is a knowledge-based repository where you put your different questions and answers to. There's a bit of training you have to do to make sure it caters to all the different types of ways a user can ask a question. Well, once you've done that, you expose that as an endpoint, and then every time a user passes a query through in your bot channel, it just sends back the response it thinks is most applicable to that question. So a fun example of that is one that I built for myself about a year ago. I can find it. This is my out-of-office bot. So I went on holidays last year to Spain, and instead of having an out-of-office email, I sent them a link to this bot. So any question that a user has regarding the different technologies that I covered, I put into my bot. So they can ask me questions about bots, they can ask questions about serverless, they can ask me questions like, okay, where have you gone? Why do you want leave? And so I had that all as a bot, and that was all just a Q&A maker. So any question, pretty standard question that a user would have, they can come up to my bot and it would answer for you. I'm a big advocate of automating everything. And so I'm still in the process of making a BetBot 2.0, which I'm just going to automate everything I can do in my job. So that'll be next year's group. We'll see. Language understanding. So rather than just spitting back static answers from the Q&A maker, language understanding, or using something like Lewis, which is the language understanding intelligence system, understands intents and entities of a sentence. So an intent is the verb of a sentence. So if I want to order a pizza, the intent of that would be the order intent, because I want to order a pizza. The entity would be pizza, something that we can use as a parameter to pass into a method somewhere in our code. So an example of a language understanding bot would be something like Hitmonk. So I can ask it, rather than just giving it an explicit ask or an explicit question that would give me a static response, I want to ask something that needs a very specific information back. So I can say, oh, Hitmonk, by the way, is a traveling helper bot. So if I want to book a holiday somewhere, Hitmonk will take me through booking flights, booking hotels, that kind of thing. It's also an online service itself, but they've interfaced their information with the bot to help a user actually go and book their holiday. So I can say, hi, Hitmonk. Get me out of Adelaide in December. Maybe I have some leave that I want to use. So that's not a very specific way of asking something. There are multiple different ways I can ask that. What Hitmonk is doing, it's saying, okay, I think from what you said, your intent is that you're looking for a getaway in Adelaide, and the entity would be the date between December 1 and December 31. I could be more specific, I could be less specific. What Lewis does is that it will return you the intent, and your application code will then do something based on what you're returning from that service. This falls into the next type of bot, which is a form bot. A lot of the time, dialogues can be complex. You might need to get lots of different pieces of information from a user. What the bot framework does and the bot SDK does is it provides you these libraries that you can use to help easily get information from a user, question after question, rather than having to handle if a user says something and they want to go one way and handle all the different ways that a conversation could go. So this is using something called form flow in C# and waterfall in Node.js. And I'll show you a little bit of how that looks in the code a little bit later on. But this is an example of something like a form flow. The bot is looking for a bit of information, and it's just going to take me through that information. I'm going to choose a couple of different options, and then at the end of that, it's going to give me a nice little package that I can just select purchase and be good to go. So I can go get flight options. So it's kind of like a form that you'd have on an online website or a mobile application, but in this case, it's just got a little bit more personality. As you can see, ready to jam. So Hitmonk's a bit cool. Awesome. And the last type of bot is a proactive bot. So a lot of the time, your bot might not be very fast. It might want to kick off some process in the background, rather than leaving your user there waiting for a response, such as what Hitmonk did there. It just said, I'm still searching, give me 2 minutes. You can have a proactive bot to go and kick off something in the background. It might be on an Azure function or something else on serverless. You can continue on with your conversation, but then once it's ready, it can then interject back into the bot and actually proactively message and reach out to the user to let them know that something has happened. And as I said, all these templates are available in the Azure Bot service, which I'll walk you through in the next part of the demo. So now I'm going to go through how to build bots. And this is using the Bot Framework, which is essentially a developer's toolkit for accelerated bot development. What's included is the bot service, which you spin up on Azure, which publishes out your bot to the world. So you've got the Azure Bot service, which you spin up on Azure, and you say, hey, I'd like a bot. You can host this bot wherever you want. I've seen bots been hosted on-prem. I've seen them hosted on Azure Functions, so they're serverless, or I've also seen them hosted on Web Apps itself. Where you host it is up to you. You surface it with the Azure Bot service, and that's where you publish it out to different channels. It's where you can do your testing in a web chat emulator, and it's where you can do some high-level monitoring as well. The bot builder is what you use to actually build out your features and functionality of a bot. A great way to start is spin up a template from the Azure Bot service, download the code, use that in your favorite code editor, and then once you've got the bot builder SDK running and it's all working well, then you can just start developing from there. And then once you're ready and you've got all your bot plumbing and skeleton all together, then you can add intelligence with Microsoft Cognitive Services. So add language understanding, speech to text, text to speech, translation, all those different kinds of things. In terms of building your bot and how it relates to traditional application development, it's actually quite similar. So with the traditional application, you start with the main screen, and that main screen remains in control of the context until the new order screen is evoked. And until that new order screen is closed or a new screen is evoked, it remains in control of that context. So the bot architecture works in a very similar way. Instead of screens, it works with dialogues. So whenever you go into a bot, it'll start in a root dialogue itself. And then based on where a user wants to go, it'll evoke different dialogues based on that. So if I go into a bot and I say I want to make a new order, it would evoke the new order dialogue, and that will remain in control of the context of the conversation. The dialogues work in a stack, so which is good for in terms of communicating it to it like a human, because we tend to go off track and we do lots of different things at the same time. So you always have track of those dialogues, and every time you finish a dialogue, you'll just be taken off the stack. And it works like that until eventually you return back to your root dialogue. So to show how all these different features and functionalities of a bot work together, I've got a demo bot. This is available on GitHub, so I definitely recommend having a look through the code base later on to see how it all works together. But I'm just going to walk through how that looks like now. So this is my demo bot here, and I've just gone into my GitHub repository, which is under my name, Beck Lyons, and then devbot. It's actually available in the README file. So if I go Control-click, it'll work as a pop-up, and it'll just pop up there on a different page. And essentially what this bot was built to do, I'm a bit of a lazy developer, and like I said, I like to automate all the things. So I built a bot that does that. It automates all the things a user would want to do with the GitHub repository. So with this particular bot, I'll let it introduce itself. I can ask it questions about my repository, such as how do I pull this code? What are the dependencies? I can search the repository for a specific file based on code that I'm looking for. I can submit issues if I see there's something wrong in this repository. I can do that from the bot itself, and I can queue a new build. So all of these are using the different types of bots that I mentioned before. So asking questions about the repository, we use Q&A Maker. Submitting an issue, we'll go through a form flow. Finding code just calls out an external service. And then queuing a build does a bit of proactive work for me as well. And under the hood, it's all using language understanding. So if at any one point I need to go somewhere else, it will recognize my intent, and then it will take me to the right part of the bot so that I'm actually going to be answering what the user wants to do. So I'll start off by asking a couple of questions. So I'm going to ask some questions. So what's my question? What are the dependencies? And it'll answer me. This is just a static Q&A. Why devbot? Because I'm a lazy developer. There we go. Yeah, and I can ask a whole different range of questions. Before I continue on with the demo and show the other parts, I'll just run through how I put this together and how it works from an Azure perspective. So right now, it's doing a bit of basic dialogue. You'll just respond to a hi, and I use the basic template and built on from that. And then I've used Q&A Maker once the user's decided that they want to go and ask a question. So how this works from Azure and how I spin up a bot. I'm assuming everyone here is familiar with Azure. Everyone good? Yep. Yeah. Awesome. So So from Azure, or I can do this from the command line or by templates. I'll create a new resource and I'll start a new bot. There are two different types of bots that you'll have to make a decision point here. There's a function bot and a web app bot. Essentially, a function bot is serverless. It'll run in an Azure Functions type environment. So if no one's talking to your bot, it's not going to be hosted and you're not going to get billed anything. It can also scale up to thousands of implications if you need. If you need more control about how you'd like your bot to scale, then you put your bot on a web app, and this works under the hood on an app service. But you've also got an option to host it on a completely different platform if you want, and then you just register your bot using a bot channel registration service. So for now, we're going to create a web app bot, create, and then it'll go through a creation visit, and I'll just give it a couple of parameters. So bot dev number, point it at a subscription, put it in a resource group, select which location you want your bot to be running out of. The pricing tier is free and standard one. So for anything proof of concept development, definitely try the free tier. You get 10,000 messages a month, so this is essentially free to get started. This will be the name, the endpoint of what it will be. It will be a .azurewebsites.net. And here's when I get to pick my templates. So all those different bots I talked about earlier, this is where you can start going really fast. So if I want a Q&A bot, a form bot, a basic bot, a language understanding bot, a proactive bot, this will create the code base for me. I'll download that source code and then I can just start coding immediately rather than having to develop everything from scratch and reinvent the wheel. My favorite one to use is the language understanding one. It's really good. It sets up the Lewis behind the scenes plumbing for you, and then all you have to do is log into Lewis and you've got a couple of intents and entities that's already pre-trained for you, and it makes it really easy to get started with language understanding. So for now I'll just pick the basic one, and yeah, a couple of different things here. I'll turn this off now, and then I click create, and that will create that for me. I have already created one in the background to save some time, so you can see what you get from the Azure Bot service once it says be created. So now I'm flicking over to a bot that I created about an hour ago. So here I've got an overview of my bot here. This is the messaging endpoint. I've got different things here. If I want to build this, this is where I'd go and download those files that it's created for me, and this is just the template. I can work on it in the online code editor, so I don't need my own local developer environment. But if you do, definitely download it and then upload it to a source code repository later so you can put it into your normal DevOps pipeline. You can test your bot here, and because I haven't done anything special with it, it's not going to do anything cool. It's just going to be the template out of the box. And so I can see how that works in a live environment. I can get some analytics here about how many people are interacting with my bot, from what channels are they coming, and I get all this from application insights that I don't know, so it's not stable. And here's where I publish it out to different channels. So if I want to connect to Teams or Skype, it's as simple as clicking a button. For some other ones like Facebook Messenger, Twitter and Slack, there are some other things you have to do on the Facebook Messenger side to get it to publish out, but you essentially configure it all here, and then also some on the Facebook Messenger side. And then there are a couple of other things here. You can configure the application settings, and then you're good to go. From the Q&A side and how I actually got it to answer those questions, I'm using Q&A Maker. So Q&A Maker is that question and answer repository where I have all my questions and all my answers. I can do training on the fly so that if a user asks a question in their own way, it'll be able to understand what type of answer they're looking for. So here I've got my repository of all those questions, if you can see it. So I've got a couple that you can ask here. And the great thing about this is that we can update this and have it published on the fly. So I can create a new Q&A pair. When is it?
Hopefully at 5 o'clock.
Cool. I'll save and retrain that, and I can publish it out.
How does it handle like typos and spelling mistakes?
So typos is where you can handle in the actual training part. So if I go and test this here, some of the typos it automatically understands based on what it's already learned before. But if it's a typo specific to your particular information, that's when you have to train it yourself. So let's see if that works. There we go. Okay, so sometimes it understands typos if it's pizza, but if it's something your organization specific, like if that was a particular product that you had, a particular something you were asking about, then you'd have to train that in yourself.
So if you ask why is pizza,
Very philosophical.
Well,
would it say 5 o'clock, or would it come up saying this is undefined?
right now, if we haven't changed it in, it might come out as undefined. Oh, there we go. We can add in alternate text here. So if there are different ways of asking this. So when is the round shaped food coming? Next time someone asks that, it's going to know 5 o'clock because it knows pizza. But if I ask that without training it, so if I ask it now, because I haven't saved and retrained that alternate response, it's going to come up with no good match. So just train this one. Save and retrain. And hopefully, because I haven't used that one. And that's kind of the training process behind Q&A Maker. So I'm going to go publish this out now.
How does it link to your Azure?
How does it link to my Azure? So this was the Q&A Maker was a free service as of a couple months ago. Now you spin this up in Azure. Behind the scenes, it uses Azure Search, and it's hosted on another app service. So you'd have a different subscription with your Azure Search, your app service, and the Q&A service running on that. But then you log into it here and configure it all.
That means now when you log into the Q&A Maker, you can see the bot service that you created in Azure there.
Not the bot service that you create there. This runs on an app service itself. To connect the bot service to the Q&A Maker, this gives you a set of keys that you publish out, and then you plug that into your bot code, and then it calls out to this endpoint. Awesome. So now that I've published that, if I ask when is hopefully this will come up with 5 o'clock if that's published out right. There we go. Cool. And there are different ways you can put this into your DevOps pipeline, so that if you don't want it to be available to the public straight away, then there are ways you can do that. But I think it's cool that you just change it in there and it's available to everyone. So it's really good if you have content in there that you want to change quickly, you can do that. Alright, how am I going to time?
2 minutes or so.
Oh, awesome. Cool.
10 to 15. Cool.
Great. So now I'll move to the next part of the bot, which is implementing language understanding in the actual bot itself. So right now I'm in the Q&A dialog function. So it's just going to be calling the Q&A service. What I've implemented is that anywhere in my bot that I want to do something else, it will call out to language understanding. And then if it's not applicable for the particular dialog that I'm in, it's going to take me to the right one. So in this case, I want to, let's click back here. I want to maybe search this repository for a specific piece of code that I'm looking for. This isn't a static answer that I can get from Q&A. This is something that I need custom business logic around, and I need my bot code to execute. So I'm going to ask it, Cool. So this wasn't a response from Q&A Maker. What it's done is it's chucked this response to Q&A Maker. It's found there wasn't a particular answer that matched this. It's then thrown it to Lewis, and Lewis has said, hey, I think this has to do with the fine code intent. So it's then executed that part of the code and called up the fine code dialog in my code, which is essentially a new dialog or a new screen. So if I try to ask it a question from Q&A, it's a different dialog, so it's not going to go to Q&A Maker anymore. Awesome. So in this particular dialog, I send in a particular query about a piece of code that I want to find. So I want to find everywhere in the code that Lewis is called. So I'm just putting in Lewis, and it's just going to spit back a whole bunch of files that have Lewis either in the file name or in the file itself. Not very pretty. I could make it look nice, but it's going to ask me, would I like to try another query, or I can tell it to go back. In this case, I'm good, so I'll tell it to go back. And then it will send me off to the beginning again. Awesome. So that was language understanding and how this works. I go to lewis.ai.com and I'll sign in. And then I create a Lewis app. And within that Lewis application, I create my intents. I give it a couple of examples of what an intent looks like. And then I create my entities and give it a couple of examples of what an entity looks like. So once this logs in, here we go. So this is my dev bot application, and here I've created all these different entities here. So I've got an entity that will understand when I want to create an issue. I've got an entity, an instance of when I want to find particular code, and if I want to ask questions or queue a build. So let's have a look at the find code intent. All I've done is I've just said, okay, this is the name of my intent, and this is a couple of examples of what a call to this particular intent would look like. In this case, I've not used any entities, but if I wanted to include entities here, I'd define those in entities. So an example of an entity could be, I wanted to find a piece of code in this file, and the file would be the entity of that sentence. And then instead of the user having to type in again what file it needs, it would just know from that one sentence, okay, find code in that file. To get this working from the code itself, so I'm in Visual Studio now, and this is my preferred developer environment. I've got all my different dialogues here. One of the benefits of separating out all your logic into different dialogues is that they're reusable. And so I'll go to my root Lewis dialog, and this is all I need, the piece of code that I need. So if Lewis returns back, okay, this is the find code intent, it's going to trigger off this particular code. And so that code is just opening the search code dialog, which is then handling the context for that particular part of the conversation. To get this going, all I need to do is put in my Lewis keys here, and then every time that this dialog is called, it's going to be passing that query up to Lewis, and I'm going to be getting a response back there. Cool, so that's Lewis. Another cool thing about the bot as I mentioned, is the ability to do complex conversations. So in this case, go back to my GitHub. I might have been looking around here, I might have been working a little bit with Lewis, and I find, hey, there's a bit of a bug in the code, and I want to submit an issue. I mean, I could go through all these different pages and submit an issue manually, but I'm on the bot already, I might as well do it from here. So I'm going to come into the submitted issue part of my bot, which will start the submitted issue dialog. So this is going to take me through a type of form flow, as you saw with Hitmonk. And I'm going to swap this over to Visual Studio so you can see what it looks like side by side. So what the bot builder does is it allows for accelerated bot development. So rather than handling all the different cases of a user going this way or that with a particular dialogue, I've just defined, okay, what the prompt is, what type of data I want to capture, and then at the end of this, I'm going to send this data and do something. So it's going to ask me who the repository owner is. That would be me, the clients. What's the repository name they've got? Where is pizza? Oh, maybe I'll say Lewis Upward, for example. And description of Lewis. This has captured all that information in, essentially this is just a model, which is capturing all the information, and I can send that information off to a backend service. I can do something with it in my bot code itself. In this case, I'm calling out to a logic app, which I'll cover in the next section. And that section covers how we can extend our bot with serverless compute. So rather than the bot having to do something, maybe call out to GitHub to create this issue, I'm getting another service to do it so that I can continue on with my conversation. Hello, so hi again. And this relates also to the proactive type bot. So I might want to do something that takes a bit of time to do, such as queuing a build. Rather than leaving my user confused and on pending, waiting for a response, I can say, okay, I'm doing something, I'll notify you when it's done. So I can say thanks and continue on with my day. I can start asking more questions about the repository. But what, as you can see here, I've continued on with my conversation, but it's interjected back into the conversation to say, hey, sorry to interrupt, just want to let you know that your build is done. And then I can say, okay, that's great, and then continue on with my conversation. So if you have any heavy lifting that your bot needs to do, upload it into another service and then interject when it's done. So 5 minutes ago, I might quickly show you what those different components look like. Cool. So this goes into the last part of the presentation today, and that's how we interact with other services and upload heavier compute tasks to somewhere else so that our user interface is fast and snappy and the user knows what's happening at all times and isn't getting frustrated with the slow bot response. And that's extent. And I mean, you can use any other service to do heavy compute tasks, but I think bots, especially bots running on Azure, work really well with some of the serverless services, such as Azure Functions and Logic Apps. Now, Azure Functions, for those of you that don't know, it's essentially serverless compute in the cloud. So you have a snippet of code, and without any underlying application or infrastructure to run it, you just say when you'd like the code to run. In this case, it would be run based on a user query or maybe a HTTP request from the bot code. It's got inputs and outputs, as you can see here, which you can do stuff with in the bot, in the function code itself, and then you reply back to the user once it's done. Logic apps are similar, except without using code, you can just define all your workflows in a user type drag and drop interface. Without going into too much depth, I'll just show you what that looks like in Azure itself. Oh, this is an example of all the different connectors that you get with Logic apps. So without actually having to explicitly code out the connections to GitHub to create an issue, I just say, I'd like a new action, I want it to be to pull out the GitHub, and I want it to pass through these 3 different pieces of information, and then it will do all the heavy lifting and the API communication itself. What's great about Logic apps, similar to the bot connector itself, is that if GitHub changes its API, that's managed for you by the Logic app connector. You don't have to do that code interface with GitHub, you just do it through another service itself. So, how that looks up in the cloud. This is my Logic app to go and create an issue. So whenever a HTTP request is received, and in this case, the bot code is calling out to that, and it's passing through all that information I captured in that form flow. I'm going to pass out that information, and I'm going to create a GitHub issue there. So if I quickly head back to my GitHub, I can see that a new issue has been created for me, thanks to this Logic app, and I can see this issue here, Lewis is not working. Creating a new task at the end of that is just as simple as inserting a new step. In this case, I've also put a step in to create a new work item. So if someone creates an issue on GitHub, I automatically create a work item in VSTS to go and fix this issue. I can do anything else from adding a new message into the service bus, calling out to an Azure function, or even sending an email if I want to be notified that this has happened. From the Azure function side, this one's a little bit more simplified. It is essentially just a HTTP response. Sorry about you there. It's not actually doing a build. It's just sleeping for a little while so that it can emulate what it would be like for a long-running task. And then it's going to send a response message back to my bot as an output of that particular function. Awesome. So with that, I think landed exactly on 5 p.m. So I'm happy with that. An overview of what we've run through today. We've run through what bots are, what bots aren't, the different types of bots that you can use, the different forms of templates that you can use from Azure to get you accelerated with bot development, and also gone through how to build bots and how to put all the different types of bots together. I definitely recommend going out into my GitHub and having a look at that code itself. Coming up in the future will be the release of Bot Framework version 4. So if there are some things that seem clunky with the Bot Framework version 3, I'm hoping as well that they'll be fixed in V4. So watch this space. It's going to be some exciting announcements coming out soon. And also in the serverless space. So how can we take our bots from just simple text user interface, doing simple things, to doing large complex bits of code. So there we go. That, hope you enjoyed it.
Great. Is there any questions for Beck before we wrap up?
Now, can you sort of the conversations?
Yes, yes you can. So the bot builder SDK does that to an extent. You can get the user state in this particular method that you can use. If you want to log that for later use, you'd use an external storage. So you can put that to log, you can put it in a table, Cosmos DB, yeah.
So another question is, how do you authenticate or authorize a particular user while using a particular bot? Say I'm personally building a bot which monitors my logic apps. So I have given rights to some developers or rather administrators who I want to be able to perform a single set of function. So how do I set that authorization? Is it through creating a tenant in Azure directory?
You can use Active Directory. You can use any other type of directory service that you have for your users. I've seen people log in with bots with different just username and passwords that they just type into the bot, or you can call out, such as the Azure bot that I showed you earlier. You can get them to go to a separate login experience, such as, where it was. I can just get them to sign in here. I will pass back the token into the bot, and then based on the credentials that gets passed back, it will give the users certain options of what they can and can't do.
So I do have to maintain a separate data store to track what user has what rights, depending upon the credentials that are entered.
Yeah.
Okay.
What I've also seen in terms of authenticating a user is facial recognition and voice recognition.
Yeah, I tried that, but it's not that accurate yet. It takes a lot of images to train the API to recognize a face, but
Are you using the face API?
yeah. I mean, I tried it through a logic app, but the results were not that consistent. I trained it using 10-15 images, but still the score that logic app returns basically is in 80 and 90% range, in between them. So I wouldn't trust that.
It's interesting. I'll take that offline. So interesting.
Sure.
Cool. No other questions?
One more. So this I was reading about this version 4 of Bot Framework SDK. So it says that there is a speech to intent direct conversion in Lewis. So I was wondering if I want to do that in version 3, how we have achieved it. If I want to add speech to my bot, so how would I do it normally?
So depending on the different channels that you use, There are different ways of getting speech to text in. So,
Is that one you want to take offline though? Ben?
yes, I'll walk you through this other demo, and it goes through authentication, and it goes through
Thanks.
speech to text as well.
Cool. Awesome. Great. Thanks very much, Ben. That was great. Thanks again for presenting. Everyone, feel free to get some pizza.
Thank you for joining us at the IG Pro community. I want to give a big shout out to our sponsors Microsoft and Sorrison, your System Center experts. If you want to see more, subscribe to our channel and click the bell to get notified when we put up new content. And feel free to leave your suggestions for future events in the comments below. For more details on upcoming events or to join us live at our next meeting, join our meetup community at the link provided.